Here. Welcome to Gaming Going Deeper, a podcast series by the Gaymen's Brotherhood where we talk about personal development, mental health, and sexuality. I am your host, Matt Landsiedel. I am an intuitive life and spiritual coach and counselor. I specialize in teaching people how to heal shame and trauma and embody their authentic self so they can enjoy more meaningful connections in their lives. My areas of expertise are working with highly sensitive people, empaths, and gay men to develop a stronger sense of self-worth. Today's topic is imposter syndrome, and we are joined by Travis Holp. So good to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Matt. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. Me too. We have good vibes, and I'm looking forward to seeing what we can co-create for the audience today and for ourselves, really, learning from each other and growing with each other as well. So I want to share with the audience just a little bit about you and who you are. So Travis is a medium, spiritual guide, and is a minister with the Metaphysical Church. He is passionate about helping others along their healing journey. Through working with spirit, Travis has learned that love is universal and all things are possible. Perfect. It's potent and simple and to the point. I love it.
I try to just get right to the meat of things sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I dig it. We're doing very similar work. We had a chance to have like a meet and greet together, and the vibes were really, really yummy. So yeah, this is good. I'm excited to be here with you today. Okay, so I want to first start off by, well, maybe what I'll do is I'll share what we're going to be unpacking. So there's a couple terms here that I think we're going to be using quite a bit today and talking about. So obviously the first one is imposter syndrome. So this is seen as the persistent inability to believe that one's success is deserved or has been legitimately achieved as a result of one's own efforts or skills.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that feeling of feeling like you're a fraud, like that you haven't fully mastered or developed the skills yet. And usually underpinning imposter syndrome is going to be like inadequacy. So inadequacy is this feeling that we're not good enough or that we don't measure up. This can lead to feeling self-doubt, which is not believing in yourself or your abilities. And lastly, perfectionism. So perfectionism is a really big part, I think, of this journey and feeling inadequate. And I think perfectionism is the overcompensation that we use when we don't feel good enough and we don't measure up. So defined is the drive to appear, feel, or be perfect. Perfectionism in psychology is a broad personality trait characterized by a person's concern with striving for flawlessness and perfection, and is accompanied by critical self-evaluations and concerns regarding others' evaluations. So I wanted just off the top to just describe those, because I think these are really important concepts that we're going to be really moving through today, at least definitely for me and my experience of imposter syndrome. So the four questions that we're going to be unpacking together are: can you share a time when you experienced imposter syndrome? In what ways do you experience self-doubt? How do you deal with feelings of inadequacy? And what have you learned that's helpful or that's helped you deal with imposter syndrome? So basically, we want to give the listener towards the end things that can help overcome imposter syndrome that we have come across in our own personal experiences. So I was thinking about what I wanted to share this morning, and I was like, I remembered that I had written a quote probably 2 years ago when I was working through some imposter syndrome stuff. So I figured instead of just like coming up with something, I just went back and found this quote, and I'm like, this is perfect. So basically, here's what I wrote. So imposter syndrome is when we feel like a fraud for showing up in something that we don't fully feel confident at doing. We usually get this when we are placing high expectations on being a master at something and don't feel internally that we have mastered it yet. It can lead to the "I'm not good enough" story that comes from shame and inadequacy, and then we can mask it with perfectionism. We may avoid trying new things to avoid having to experience the underlying shame or the "I'm not good enough." This leads to imposter syndrome when we push through that and try new things without feeling like we are valid or deserving of doing it yet. We experience a sense of "I am invalid" when we are experiencing imposter syndrome. When you clear all the peripheral stuff, it comes down to the fear of failure. We don't feel capable of handling failure because it will make us feel this impending "I am not good enough" or the invalid feeling that we have learned to avoid through perfectionism. Shame teaches us to rely on external validation because we don't feel good enough to validate ourselves. We get fixed on appearing like we have it together because we don't feel like we have it together. So as long as others are reflecting back to us that we appear to have it together, it gives us a sense of confidence. Shame asks us, who the heck do you think you are? And this is the message that comes through as the inner critic in our thoughts and creates the imposter syndrome. One way out of this loop is to start validating yourself. Give yourself the space to be what you are now and what you want to become, because you deserve both. When the inner critic chimes in, recognize it and begin to offer it what it is craving, usually a sense of safety to just be you in all expressions that you want to show up in. The other aspect of this is to make peace with your relationship with failure. Why does failure have to be so painful for us? Why do we go to such lengths to avoid it? If you give yourself space to fail, you give yourself space to experience the things you need to get closer to your authenticity. So I'm still navigating this. Like, imposter syndrome is such a big thing, and self-doubt and all these things. Like, it's been a big part of my life growing up, and shame and inadequacy are definitely the underlying things. And I've been having to move through a lot of this experience. And I'm curious, like, what resonated with you out of hearing that?
I think that whole bit that you wrote, it was absolutely beautiful. And thank you so much for sharing that. There's so much in there that I can identify with. And, while you were talking, I was thinking, like, when was the first time I actually did experience imposter syndrome? Like, where did this come from? And, I think for me, it was when I was younger and I was hiding the fact that I was gay with my parents. And that's the first time I can remember ever feeling like I wasn't being myself. I wasn't being authentic to myself. And, it's so funny. I make this joke all the time, but I'm like, I've got this voice, I've got these hand motions. Like, there was never like really a time where I was like in the closet, but I was saying I was in the closet, right? But, in school, I never really got like great grades. I was always like a solid C/D student.
Same here, yeah.
And I was good for that D. Like, the D plus was like, it was so funny because teachers would post grades. They would post them in order of like best to like not so great. And so I was like, oh, I'll just go down to the D's and find my name. And when I got into like my working career, I was in sales and I would have these like really amazing jobs. And I'm like, how in the hell did I get here? Like, I'm not that smart. So, I've had echoes of those things all throughout my life. And I can't remember a time where I didn't experience imposter syndrome at some point.
Yeah. I think it's part of the human condition, because I look at imposter syndrome as, kind of this like this term that we use, but really all the terms we described, or that I described earlier, are the things that we're actually talking about, right? So inadequacy, I do think it's a part of the human condition. I think that the I'm not good enoughness that we experience as human beings is part of the human condition. And I think we come into this life, we feel perfect, whole, and complete, and that's the creation, that's our birthright. And then through the conditioning, our traumas, our pain, our hurts, our suffering, we learn somewhere along the line that we're not good enough and that we don't measure up. And then we start to, make all these overcompensations around us, perfectionism being one of them, these sorts of things, or we go into collapse and we just feel not worthy and we start to self-deprecate. And that can definitely be something that a lot of people do. So, I wrote this down. So guarding against imposter syndrome is to not live your life to the fullest, because it means you're not trying new things. If you're experiencing imposter syndrome, it means you are facing your fears and putting yourself out there. It means you have left your comfort zone, essentially. And something that I've really realized about myself in the last while is that I have guarded against imposter syndrome for a lot of my life, and it comes from a fear of failure, and it's been perfectionism is what I've used to do that. And the guarding has kept me behind my walls. So I haven't put myself out there. I've been wanting to sing publicly since I was a little boy. And I just 5 months ago now, hired a vocal coach. And then just like a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago, I had my first vocal performance. And holy crap, I got up there and I felt the wash of all my shit. It was like, who do you think you are to be a singer? All the imposter syndrome came through. And so I'm really navigating this right now, but I've made this year my year of courage because I really want to overcome a lot of my fears and I want to choose courage over my comfort zone. And, but what I've realized is that over the last probably decade or two, just how limiting I was on letting myself try new things that I knew I wouldn't be great at. Right. And now I'm trying new things. And it's like with singing, it's like I know I have a good voice, but like I know I have a lot of work to do. So I'm failing, I'm missing notes, I'm off pitch, and it's making me feel like a lot of shame and inadequacy, and all the feelings are coming through. But this is the growth mindset. I'm choosing to grow and move through mistakes and failures as a way to kind of get better.
Yeah. You know, it reminds me of something that I was listening to at the gym. So when I'm at the gym, I listen to Abraham Hicks.
That is amazing. I love that.
Which is like so funny because you wouldn't think it's like gymspiration, but like it's like Abraham Hicks or Whitney Houston. There is like really nothing else that I'm listening to when I'm working out, or Tina Turner for sure.
That could be good.
Man, I love that woman so much, and her story is inspiring, but another conversation for another day for sure. But you know, I was listening to, and it's just funny how the cooperative components fall into place, right? Like we have this discussion to have this podcast episode and talk about it, and then ever since then it's like the universe is like, and here's some imposter syndrome, and here's a lesson for you, and here's something really cool for you to read about it. And you know, so it's been really cool to have those cooperative components fall into place. But I'm listening to Esther, and Esther was talking about the so I just kind of like let go and let God with Esther Hicks. I just open up YouTube and I'm like, whichever one pops up, that's the one I need today. And it was on imposter syndrome.
Wow.
And so I was like, oh, cool. Okay. So I hit play and I start listening. And essentially, Esther summarized imposter syndrome in a way that felt so just vibrationally yummy for me. And it was, imposter syndrome is when you have already, when your source self has expanded and you just haven't caught up to it yet.
Yeah, I love that.
And I was like, whoa. Because for me, it's like imposter syndrome. It's like there's a lot of shame. There feels like there's a lot of judgment there, right? Because that's why it comes up.
Yeah.
But then I hear this and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I just haven't allowed myself to catch up to it yet.
Yeah.
And for me this past week, it's been almost like a shift that like I desperately needed. Because every time it pops up, I'm like, oh, I just haven't caught up to it yet. Let me just get caught up. Let me stop holding myself back.
Yeah.
Which is something, looking back, I've done my entire life. But it's funny though, because my process has never really been like, think about it, ideate with it, and then like maybe do it. Mine has always been like, we're jumping off the cliff and I'll think about it when I'm midair.
Yeah.
and in that, it's so funny because like the imposter syndrome comes like later. It's like I'm midair, then I'm like, oh crap, what if I don't make it to the other side? When it's like, well, too late now, right? And then it's like this like agony that happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, that new definition has definitely turned some things around for sure.
I love that definition. It's funny, we're so similar. I've lived by the motto since I was 15 years old. I read the book Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers. It was the very first book I ever read in self-help. And I've lived by that motto. And yes, what happens for me, and I call that like a vulnerability hangover. So I jump, I take the leap, I put myself out there, I expose myself. And then afterwards is when it comes pouring in on me. And I feel the vulnerability hangover, which is exactly what happened after me singing. I went into like, I didn't want to be around people. I like wanted to hide under my covers. I felt so exposed. By the world, and I'm just kind of coming out of it now. It's been 2 weeks and I'm just coming out of the vulnerability hangover and all the self-judgment and the really like picking myself apart. And it's like, it was so painful, but I love her definition because I see what I'm doing now is it's like my soul and my ego are having completely two different experiences of singing. And my soul is this like infinite part of who I am, and it's infinite possibility. And the imposter syndrome is a psychological construct that lives in my ego structure, and it's really picking me apart. And so when I get up there and I sing, I'm having this like feeling of like, yes, I'm following my life path. I'm supposed to be doing this. My heart is opening, and I'm pushing my comfort zone, the edge, out further and further. And then what's happening is my soul is stepping into that energy, but my ego and my mind self is like having a hard time. It's like putting one foot out, and it's like, oh, it doesn't feel safe. Don't go any further. So I'm like in this massive inner conflict of like, and I do believe that. I think when we make transformation happen, it's like we push ourselves out further, and then what happens, we heal all the things that are kind of like holding us back, or we release the lack of, or the sense of like not feeling safe from our body. And then our mind is like still habitual. Our mind, that's the struggle, the habits that the mind gets stuck in. And when I think about like me getting in my own way, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like that, the mental habits that I have where I continuously put self-limiting beliefs on a tape, and they just keep running in my mind. But I do think there's a point when the mind lets go of that, because I think the mind is like the last thing to transform, because it is so habitual. So that's what I'm noticing. And it's just, oh my God, I'm like, when is this finally just going to push and release? Like I'm tired of this inner conflict. It's very exhausting.
When you croak, that's when.
When I croak, right? Oh God, please no.
Yeah, it's so funny. So, I'm a Virgo through and through, and perfectionism is like my middle name. And it's funny, being like a D plus student, you would think that my perfectionism kicked in like a lot later. In life. I was a late blooming Virgo, but when I started getting into spiritual work, and I decided that this was my chosen not only life path but also career path, I was like, well, I've got to be the best. Like, so I've got to work with tutors, right? And and mentors and teachers, which I highly recommend learning and expanding your education in anything, especially when you're working with the public, right? And so I hired this tutor, and I was so excited, and I'm like, he's gonna teach me how to talk to the dead like right away, and we're gonna dive in, and I'm gonna be like Teresa Caputo, walking up to people, got your grandmother here in the middle of Starbucks, and it's gonna be amazing. And we sit down, and he goes, and now he's a dear friend of mine, but he looks at me and he just goes, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know in today's session. And I was like, amazing. Thanks for bang for my buck. And he goes, you need to get out of your own way. And for 6 months, Matt, I had no idea what the hell that meant. And so I'm like, yeah, I'll get out of my own way. I didn't even know what it meant. Meanwhile, I'm showing up to readings in my head, wondering if the person across from me is getting what they need, if they feel the information is valid, and they're telling me, right, that it's valid. I'm getting great reviews, I'm getting this great following on social media, but like in my mind, it's like, no, you're really terrible at this. And so, that I don't feel that way necessarily now, but at the time it was really tough. And but getting out of your own way, it's so funny. It's something that I feel like you don't understand until you do. And then when you do, it's like, oh, snap.
It's interesting, because I have the same thing in my work, but it only comes up when I'm not feeling like sometimes I'm in the flow, and I'm like, just like, boom, like nothing can interrupt that. And then I would say that's 75% of the time. 25% of the time, I'm very self-doubting. For me, like I haven't fully learned how to get out of my own way yet. I still have days where I do get in my own way. So do you have any suggestions or any tips that have worked for you? And I know for you, you're saying it's more of an embodied state. And I totally understand what that means. Like you can't really teach it. You can transmit the presence of it. And maybe that's what I'm feeling that from you now. But do you have anything that you could share with us from the psychological realm that might help?
So I now talk to my ego like it's a separate person.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I think of my ego as something that's here to protect me and try to keep me safe. Almost like a guard dog.
Yeah. Yeah. I like
Right?
that.
That's
I do
like,
that too.
yeah. And so, there was a time where like before clients, it was so funny because coming from sales, like in my background, right? Like I've got spreadsheets, I got things that are like quantifiable
Yeah.
that I can see, and I can see results and I can see progress like right in front of me, right? And in this work, it's totally different. You're going off of feeling, you're going off of intuition, you're going off of knowing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so without having those kind of quantifiable things and only having my feelings, it's for me, it's, when I feel that kick up, I have to be conscious enough to slow myself down.
Yeah.
Like if I get up in the morning or if I'm getting ready for clients and I get that like that anxiety that comes up, where I'm like, oh, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Right. Or I'm like, maybe I should just like cancel my day, just pretend I'm sick, and then I'll just deal with this all later. Right.
Yeah.
Um, I'll have to slow myself down and check in, and I think of my ego as this like this guard dog, right? But then like I just start laughing at it. Like I'll be like, this is so silly. Why are we doing this? It's so
Yeah.
funny now, right? Like now it's kind of like, okay, well, it's okay. We're all right. Like we're not in physical danger. Cause I think that comes in when, it creates this kind of sense of physical danger in our body almost
Yeah.
when that imposter syndrome is kicking up.
Totally.
But there's nothing. I mean, I laugh. I'm like, it's not like my clients are gonna like come through Zoom and shoot me in the head. Like, it's not gonna happen like that, right? Like,
Yeah.
and what's the worst thing that can happen? A client doesn't resonate with something I say, and I give their money back. Oh well, who cares? Like,
Yeah.
literally, not a big deal. So I have those like conversations with my ego, and I just treat it like it's a part of myself,
Yeah.
and that has helped me so much. And then sometimes just like making light of it, like, oh yeah, you really think that like today's gonna be horrible? Okay, that's cute.
Yeah.
Right? Like, be
Yeah.
quiet, sit down.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's part of it is like learning how to be more gentle with ourselves, and I think not take ourselves so seriously, because the ego is that serious energy. And
Yeah.
when we enter our higher selves and we personify our ego and create it as a separate sense of ourselves,
Yeah.
we can start to be bashful and playful with it. And it's like, so I love that. That's such a great tip. Yeah, thank you.
And for me too, I think ego gets really nervous when we are in the present moment. When we're
Yes.
present, ego gets really nervous because that's where growth and expansion and change happens, but it's also uncertain, and our ego and our fear like certainty.
Yeah.
And there's nothing certain in the present moment. And I know when I'm with clients, and even when I meditate, I know that for that time I'm 1,000% present.
Yeah.
And my ego is like, wait, what are we doing? Like
Yeah.
that's a little dangerous.
Yeah.
Can't we just like cancel the day and go like watch Netflix or something? Right.
Yeah.
And so I look at it that way, as like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have a really great day because my
Yeah.
imposter syndrome is really kicking up. It knows that something great is coming. And those have truly been some of my best days with clients.
Yeah.
Um, and it's funny because I talked to my therapist about this, and I look at him and I was like, do you ever get like imposter syndrome? And he looks at me and he goes, I wake up every day thinking to myself, what do these people think having me as their therapist?
Yeah.
So it's like,
I
it's a
think
good
those thoughts
laugh.
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or people are paying me for my advice. Like I have those days where I'm like,
Yeah.
right? Because we're all messy. We're all fucked up sometimes. We're all in weird
Yeah.
moods. Like this is just part of the human experience. And I was kind of laughing inside when you said the ego doesn't like presence, because that's exactly how I feel. Because the presence for me is like, you're not self-monitoring to make sure that you're conducting yourself in a way that everyone else will approve of. So
Yeah.
like, when sometimes I'll have moments where I'm so present that I will
Mm-hmm.
like pick my nose, and I'm in
Yeah.
public and I don't realize I'm doing it, or I'll fart,
Yeah.
or I'll do something that should be embarrassing. And I'm
Yeah.
just so present with my body that I just don't fucking care. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, and that scares me, because it's like, especially when I'm public and I'm putting myself out there a lot, that it's like, what if I become so present that I forget to conduct myself in ways that are politically correct, or you know, so there's that fear that it's like I have to always keep myself somewhat on, and not fully let go and just become the presence that I am, because I'm worried that I might not, or it's really, it stems from a fear of failure. I'm worried that I will be, that I will do something wrong, or I will fail. It's so crazy. It's amazing how the ego just plays all these little tricks on us, you know?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And like that need for approval, right? Like that worrying about being so present in our body, that if I am present, like, what are people going to think?
Yeah.
And what are they going to think about me? And then will I be rejected?
Yeah.
Will I feel even more shame? Because I think imposter syndrome is so powerful, because we've got this vibration of something that's active within us, that's fearful. And then the second somebody says something that's in alignment with that fear, that validates that fear for us, like if somebody is like, you know what, you really are horrible at your job, or a horrible singer, or you aren't smart, right? Yeah. It's like it just gives validity to that feeling. Meanwhile, and it's so funny because I just had this thought today. I'm in the sauna, so I take my phone into the sauna. No one's in there. It's a very small sauna. I'm not like taking pictures of people or anything, but like I'm in there in the sauna and I'm going through like, so it's like my time to check my Instagram comments, because I meditate at home and all that stuff, right? And when I'm in the sauna, I'm just trying to focus on not dying. Yeah. It's so like, I'm just like, Instagram comments, we'll reply to all of those, and they're all so nice. Yeah. And I'm reading all of them, and people are like, you've made my day, you've done this and done that. And he's like, these are like, you know, they make my heart sing. But I guarantee you, I get one bad comment, and that's the one I'm going to focus on. I can have all of these amazing comments, and they're not sinking in, but that one bad one is like, I won't let it go for hours, right? Yeah. And it's my imposter syndrome for me is very much tied into a wanting of approval. And as I go along my journey, I'm finding that the less I seek understanding and approval from others, the happier I am. And it ties into how I receive love, because I thought for the longest time, Matt, I couldn't receive love from people.
Yeah, me too.
And I realized for myself, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's not true. I can absolutely receive love. I'm just not focused on that. I'm focused on understanding and approval.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so I'm looking for something that probably isn't going to be there. And if it is, I don't really need it.
Yeah.
But love and connection, I can have those things without approval or understanding from other people.
Totally. Yeah. And I think that can stem from attachment trauma. Like if we confused love and approval from our caregivers, or our caregivers confused love and approval for us, that can really create that dynamic. So it's like our parents didn't learn how to unconditionally love us, but they made us work for it. So it's like, if you do this, I will show you that I love you. That's approval. That's not love. That's approval. Right. And we get really thirsty for that. And then we start to learn that that's how we have to negotiate within our relationships to get our need for feeling loved met. But it's never satiating. It's a bottomless pit that will never be filled up, because you can't fill your need for love with approval. It won't work, right? Approval is more of a structure of the ego, I find, and it makes the ego feel good. And I think love is a structure of the soul. It makes the soul feel good. And so I'm still making this transformation, actually, believe it or not, right now. Like I'm learning how to open my heart back up after, just significant trauma that I went through as a child related to my attachment. And I shut down my heart, and to keep me safe. And it was an adaptive thing that I did, because I needed to do it to keep myself safe, but it's not serving me anymore. And I'm learning now how to open my heart back up. And I'm meeting a very, very strong fear right now in my life, like a very strong fear of intimacy, a very strong fear of vulnerability. And when I open my heart, I feel like so exposed to potential hurt, to judgment, to criticism, to all these things. But I'm like, I need to move through this. I need to move through this so I can feel love again. I really want to feel that again, because I don't let it in. I'm not good at
Yeah.
receiving love right now. Like it's such
Mhm.
an interesting thing. So yeah.
Yeah. I feel you. I've just started dating again
Mm.
after taking like a
How's
year
that
off.
going? Yeah.
Oh, Matt.
I got my own stories. Trust me, it ain't pleasant.
Here's the thing. Every time I go on a date or I meet someone that it's not quite there, I know I'm getting closer. Like that I can say for sure. Like I don't know who this man is yet that I'm gonna be dating,
Mm-hmm.
but I know he's close.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because the way that this has kind of worked for me is an imposter syndrome, especially, right? Because I think sometimes I show up in my friendships and I'm like, what are these fuckers? Why are they friends with me? And
Because
it's
you're
funny because
beautiful.
thank you. I'll be here all day. Just keep giving me compliments. No, and actually it's so funny because one of my very dearest friends, I actually married him and his husband. Um, he was actually the one that turned me on to gay men going deeper
Mm.
and how I kind of discovered you wonderful souls. And it was so funny because like I had never had solid friendships like this. And I'm showing up in this friendship and it's so funny because I would be in this friendship and I'm like, why do all of these people like me? I'm not that great of a person.
No.
Like, and when I met them, my life was like totally different. It was vastly different.
Mm.
And it's so funny though with imposter syndrome because it's kind of like I worked through that in friendships and then in my career and now it's like next level relationships and love
Yeah.
in romantic love. And so I'm there with romantic love and dating.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like I feel like I've kind of just gotten out of that in my career, or gotten out of well, I won't say out, but I've gotten to a solid place now with where I'm at. I'm sure there will be more expansion and more growth, and I'll be, you know, back in the place of asking again, but in my
Yeah.
career. But for now, I feel like I'm in a solid place there. So now it's like dating and love. And so that's been interesting going on dates with people and having that old imposter syndrome fear kind of creep back up. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
it's been wild. But in my friendships, that's been like the most healing. It's like, I have this great group of friends and I love them all so much. And and I think there's still days where I'm like, maybe they don't want to be my friend. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But they they really taught me the value of friendship and how powerful that can be to shift things in your life.
Yeah. Tremendously.
Yeah.
Tremendously. This
Yeah.
is the power of the brotherhood too. Like it's a platonic community that if it leads to romantic, great, but that's not
Mm-hmm.
why people come in.
Mm-hmm.
And we are realizing how important it is to have friendships with other gay men and
Yeah.
how healing that is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
so it's important. I want to comment on what you said about relationships because I think that's so important and I think a lot of people suck at relationships, romantic relationships. We don't learn it. It's not a skill we learn. It's a skill we see maybe in our parents or caregivers or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, and then we kind of mimic that. But a lot of us struggle in this area, and we are all kind of technically imposters when it comes to being in relationships because we're learning
Mm-hmm.
as we go.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay to give ourselves space to be that. Like
Yeah.
I'm not very good in relationships. Like they get messy for me, and I make mistakes, and I get scared, and all of these things. So it's like part of my healing has been giving myself space to just be that. But
Yeah.
the key for me in moving through imposter syndrome in relationships is to communicate everything I'm feeling. If I'm
Yeah.
terrified, I need to talk to the person I'm dating about that and just bring everything onto the table, because what ends up happening is the imposter syndrome gets to become, and it turns into anxiety for me, and then
Mm.
I end up playing that out in dynamic as opposed to talking it out. And when we play out or act out our shit in relationships, that's when it leads to drama and games and all sorts of messiness. So we can make it less messy by just talking about it and bringing very authentic truth to like what it is that we're experiencing. I think that's really important.
What's been your experience with sharing big emotions like that with dating?
Oh my God. This is a very loaded question, but I would say I'm a very emotionally intelligent man.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of deep work to get to this point, and what I
Mm-hmm.
notice is that in the gay community, a lot of gay men have significant trauma and shame, which I talk about this almost on every episode,
Yeah.
and I see a very poor emotional intelligence quotient in our community. Like there's just not it's it's not high, right? And I think
Yeah.
a lot of gay men need to do a lot of deep work to do some healing so they can
Yeah.
open their hearts, just like what I'm doing. So when I always say that you can only hold space for somebody's emotional displays as deep as you've held space for yourself
Mm.
emotionally. So it just doesn't work. And the same for love. You can only love someone as deep as you've learned to love, or that you felt love within yourself.
Yeah.
So when somebody can't hold space for my emotions, I used to take it personally and think there was something wrong with me. But
Yeah.
now I just remind myself that this person hasn't yet mastered the depth that I currently am meeting them at.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
So I've reframed that. But yeah, it's been challenging for me. What about for you?
It's been interesting. So I grew up and I was told for the longest time that I was too sensitive. And so
Me too.
that has added into like feelings of inadequacy, is feeling like, well, I'm just too sensitive. And and that's a defect.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've reframed for myself is I'm actually not too sensitive. I don't believe anybody is too sensitive. I think that there are people who are just in tune with energy and in tune
Yeah.
with how they feel.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they know how to regulate that or not is a different thing, but I don't think that that's deserving of calling someone too sensitive.
Yeah. Yeah.
I believe that it's just being in tune with energy and how you feel. And then there are people who just aren't.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
don't think it's good nor bad. I think it is what it is.
Yeah.
But me and dating, I will go on these dates. And it's so funny. I'm not the let's go on a date and tell me about your favorite color and tell me about your favorite. I love talking about those things. Don't get me wrong. Like, but I'm like, if we could just like unpack some trauma here on the first date, that'd be amazing. Tell me why you are. I like knowing why people are the way they are. And I like getting to know people's energy.
Yeah, ditto. Mm-hmm.
I like to see how people light up when they talk about, because you can tell when somebody's just giving you surface conversation versus they're talking about something that they just really, really love and they're excited about. And,
Yeah.
I get so bored with like the conversation ping pong balling where it's just, um, so on the flip side though, it's so funny because I think doing this work, and maybe you can identify with this, doing this work, it's like, um, I won't say anyone has red flags because we all have red flags, every single
Totally.
one of us.
Yeah.
We're all a little toxic.
Yeah.
We're all wonderful, but we
We're
all
all
have those
messy.
things, right? We're all a little
Yeah.
messy. That's all right. Spirit is all of the above, not
Yeah.
just the higher vibrational stuff, right?
Totally. Yeah.
So, but there are times where I go on dates where I'm like, ooh, that ain't healed yet. That ain't
Yeah.
healed, or that is still a wound that we haven't even begun to address. And so it can be tough
Yeah.
because it's like I'm at this place now where I'm like, I want a partner. I used to so be like the I'm gonna fix you and heal you
Mm-hmm.
relationships. And
Yeah.
I have zero interest in that now.
Yeah, me too.
And when I go on dates, I pay attention to, do I feel safe around you?
Yeah, that's
Like, do I feel
huge.
calm? I used to get this like feeling of like one of my most favorite shows, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, brilliant show. But one of the characters described when she would meet people as glitter exploding inside of her.
Mm.
And so I was like, oh my God, that's how love feels. But for me, I learned actually like that's not great, because if I feel that, then like I want you to approve of me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I'm just going to be trying to hustle to get you to approve of me because I feel inadequate to be sitting in front of you.
Yeah.
And that's not a relationship I want to partake in either, because I've
No.
been in those relationships and they've been incredibly harmful to me.
Yeah, me too.
So, in a very long way of answering your question, dating's been interesting. It's been the learning for sure,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and I'm just like, you know what? Those cooperative components are going to fall into place when they fall into place.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, there's a lot of unhealed things happening out there in the world.
Yeah. It's tough being a sensitive, empathic person, like, because I feel that. And it's exhausting sometimes. And I'm like, sometimes I don't want to. Sometimes I just want to go on a date and I don't want to be feeling all the shit that they've experienced and all their stuff. And, so I'm like, I'm learning how to just stay more in my own center. And like, I command my energy back to me. Like, I don't want to be going and siphoning in somebody's, field. So that's helping. But, it's interesting you talk about sensitivity, because I do a lot of work in this space, and I would say sensitivity is one of the top 3 qualities that I look for in a partner, because I think it's a beautiful quality, and it's a gift. It's a gift. But I do think sensitive people have a very like a depth about them, because they are so sensitive and they're picking up on what's around them. And a lot of people who are sensitive are very highly attuned to the people around them. And I want a partner who's highly attuned to me. I want him to I want us to wake up in the morning and him to be like, yeah, like I could feel the dreams you were having last night. I energetically feel like that's the type of relationship I want. Because I offer that gift to my partners, and I always have, but I've never dated somebody where I got that back. And I'm craving to be highly attuned to, because that's such a beautiful, beautiful thing that we can offer somebody. Yeah.
Me too. I'm so ready for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's going to be amazing when it happens.
Yeah, I know. Me too. I can't wait. I can't wait.
One day.
I agree with you in the sense of being a late bloomer. I'm a late bloomer, and I have been most of my life in all areas, like going through puberty, all of these things. And I think my relationship life, I actually think, like, I'm 37 right now. I think the second half of my life is going to be the best years of my life. Like, I think the first half was very, very hard and challenging, and a lot of suffering, and I've had to undo all stuff, and I've had to work on a lot of karmic things in my life. My soul chose a very, very challenging path, but I think now I've done a lot of this clearing, and I think now I'm moving towards more ease. And I think I do think like my soulmate relationship, or the person I'm meant to spend my life with, is coming, and I'm gonna have like a beautiful relationship soon. So I'm excited for that.
Yay!
Yay to that! Yes. Okay. So I'm curious about, in which ways do you experience self-doubt?
How much time do we have? No, you know what? I do, because it's so like a part of my programming that I'm working actively through working through. But it's so funny, because there's these like 2 very different sides to me. And one is definitely ego. One is definitely my spirit, where there's like the side of me that's like, oh my gosh, I'm so great. I love my life. Everything is wonderful. I can do this. And then there's the part of me that's like, that just is like, you know what, let's just stay in bed for like another 3 days. And just, and it's so funny, because it's like, it's getting to the point now where like I'm deeper in my healing practice, deeper in my meditation. Like I can tell the energy that I'm working with. I experienced self-doubt. It's kind of trickled in through almost everything, but at the same time, but it's so funny, because of like, just the law of polarity, and because one thing exists, the other has to exist. And it has to, I just hit my head, it has to exist at the exact same time. I get very excited when I talk about this, but it has to exist at the exact same intensity, right? And so I know that if there's that doubt, there's also belief. And my therapist has reframed doubt for me as well as a blessing. And when he told me that, I was like, I think I need a new therapist. And he was like, no, but he was like, think about it. Every time you go through a period of self-doubt, do you believe in yourself more after you've worked through it? And I'm like, absolutely. And then that's like almost like I just don't doubt myself again in that.
Wow. Yeah.
And he was like, perfect. And he was like, how much? But then he talked about trusting myself. And he was like, how often do you tell yourself that you trust yourself? And I was like, well, like never. And I'll think about, like, I'm at the gym, and I think about this the most when I'm at the gym, probably because my head is clear and I'm just trying to focus on not dying. So like all resistance is kind of out of the way. But I'll be lifting something really heavy, and I'll be like, you think like, oh my God, can I do this? And then it's almost like it kicks in my brain where it's like, yeah, like you trust yourself. You're gonna, if like you're gonna be all right. You got this. You just keep going. And yeah, so I experienced a lot of self-doubt, but I also experienced a lot of self-belief at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
What
Mm-hmm.
about you?
Oh, you hit the nail on the head. I love what you just shared. The word trusting. So I have this thing, and I was actually saying this to you right before we came on air, is that I'm pretty sure I have undiagnosed ADD, probably more the
Mm-hmm.
inattentive aspect versus the hyperactive, but I do see hyperactivity as a part of my structure as well. But the inattentive part. So I almost kind of sometimes when I am like sharing,
Mm-hmm.
I'll be flooded with all of these ideas and all this stuff will come in at once, and then
Mm.
I get derailed. So I literally lose my train of thought, and that is like this part of me that I have a lot of self-doubt because it's happened, and it's happened in public settings before. If I'm public speaking, I completely forget what I'm saying because I'll think about something and then that'll lead to something, and then my mind, it's like my mind is working faster
Mm-hmm.
than I can actually process. And I think
Mm.
this is part of being ADHD, neurodivergent, sensory processing sensitivity, whatever you want to call it. I'm not a huge fan of all these labels. I just know that I have a
Mm-hmm.
very highly active mind and I have a lot of nervous energy in my body. So I do have a sense that this is a big self-doubt of mine, is it's like, and one of the reasons why I haven't put myself out there a lot in public settings, like I know I am quite public in these settings, but I mean more like getting up on a stage and speaking, because I do have a fear that I'm going to get up there and I'm going to be so overwhelmed and I'm going to have all these thoughts race in and I'm going to lose
Mm.
my focus. Um, so believe it or not, the singing is helping me with this, because I've been getting up and singing, and at my first open mic, I forgot one of my lines and I didn't let it derail me. I just kind of laughed it off and I moved on to the next line and it was fine. Like, but I did beat myself up after, I will
Yeah.
say. But then I've kind of moved through it and I'm like, you know what? I need to learn how to be more playful and fun and just let loose. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if I fuck up, I fuck up. If I forget my line, I laugh at myself. And I think
Mm-hmm.
this is what I'm learning now, is this more kind of being more playful and gentle with myself. Like, and just being okay with that, being okay with
Mm-hmm.
that. I'm going to mess up in front of people. It's going to be part of life. And that's the messy aspect of it. So that's an area where I have a lot of self-doubt right now. And I'm like kind of working through that. The other area would be about leadership,
Mm.
and leading this community is one of them, and leading my other community with Inspired to be Authentic. And yeah, I have days where I'm like, man, like I'm a leader, like really, like I'm still figuring myself out and all this stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
there's some self-doubt in that arena too. And again, it comes down to like, I like don't put so much pressure on myself. I don't have to have all the answers. And
Yeah.
people actually hire me and work with me because I don't have all the answers and because I'm
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable and I share my messiness with the world, because they don't gravitate. Well, I shouldn't say that. A lot of people don't gravitate towards perfectionism because it makes them feel inadequate. People
Mm-hmm.
gravitate towards vulnerability and like
Mm-hmm.
people that are just being really authentic and truthful about their experience. And that's kind of how I built my business, right? But
Yeah.
I have days where I forget that it's like I don't actually have to be perfect. I can just be
Mm-hmm.
like silly and mess up and these things. And so I'm learning how to give myself more grace in this
Yeah.
area, but I still have a lot of room for growth in
Yeah.
this space. Yeah.
Yeah. I've started asking myself, it's just so funny. I started asking myself, like, when I get those feelings, like, I should be like some type of caliber or some type of level. I'll be like, well, who said,
Yeah,
like, literally, who
exactly.
said we had to do that? And it's so funny because it almost just kind of like interrupts that momentum of that thought pattern for me.
Mm-hmm.
And because I feel like my mind is just always going. And I think that's a part of like honestly, I thought like for a while I was like, maybe that's just like, my brain not working right. I mean, God, who knows if it is. But so, like a 8-pound electric meatloaf, like that thing can't work right all the time, right? And so the spirit is divine, this body is from Wish. That's all I'm saying. So but I'm like thinking to myself, I'm like, well, maybe it's a part of like just the work that I do, right? Connecting into energy,
Mm-hmm.
channeling, mediumship. Like maybe my brain isn't supposed to slow down.
Yeah.
Like, and who said it had to?
Yeah.
For me. And
I like that. Yeah.
I'm like, but like it's like that, or like other things, right? Like, I'm not, of course I go to the gym. I care about my body. And there was a long time where I was like, oh my God, my body has to look like this. right? Or my mediumship has to look like this. And it's like, well, who the fuck said it had to?
Yeah.
Like who, like me, that's actually but me. Like not the world, right? Because we look at things and we compare ourselves against other people.
Totally. Yeah.
And the funny thing is, those people feel the exact same way. Like that's like the whole joke is like you see these people that you look up to and admire, but like they have imposter syndrome too.
Yeah.
Or they're comparing themselves against someone else. And that's like the joke of all of it is that we're
Yeah.
all here looking at each other and be like, I wish I was like that, or I wish I was like that. And that person's looking at someone going, I wish I was like that. I wish I was like that.
Yeah.
And it just becomes this like never ending shame cyclone spiral of shit. That's just
Totally.
like, but like that's the joke. And
Yeah.
that's why I think the universe has a sense of humor.
I agree. I agree. My guides have a sense of humor too. They always play these little tricks on me that
Oh, yeah.
and it's so funny. It's like, I swear I have a guide that's a prankster and is just always playing these little tricks on me. And it's like my ego absolutely hates it, but my soul kind of sees
Yeah.
the humor in it. Yeah.
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 Totally.
Okay, so the next question we have here is how do you deal with feelings of inadequacy? I just want to share a little bit about this because I think this is a very big problem in our community and a lot of people don't realize it. So when we have shame is kind of, the mantra of shame is there's something wrong with me. We grow up feeling different, we're gay, people shame us for being gay, and we start to internalize this message that there's something wrong. And then after something's wrong, we come into inadequacy, which is the mantra would be, I'm not good enough. I don't measure up.
Yeah.
So I do see a lot of inadequacy in our community, and I see gay men. The stereotype of gay men is, and everybody always says this, like, heterosexual people always say, gay men are always so hot and so put together, and their hair's so nice, and their homes are so nice. And I think this is where it stems from. It stems from this shame and the I'm not good enough. And right. So we want to make sure that we overcompensate and we appear to be good enough, which is perfectionism. And not in all cases. I'm not saying because you look good means that you have this issue, but I'm saying this is a stereotype that I see in the community and there's some truth to it. So I really want to highlight that because I don't think a lot of people realize where the inadequacy comes from. I think a lot of us feel like I'm not good enough, but we're not quite sure where it comes from and how to deal with these feelings when they do arise. So I'm curious for you, how do you deal with inadequacy?
Oh, such a big question.
I know.
It's a big one. But you know what? It's again, it's funny. Over the past couple months, especially, when you are on social media and people say things to you that don't feel good.
Yeah.
That resonate with feelings that you have, right? And like growing up, I was told, and this was just my parents' fear. But I remember being told that, no one would love me if I was gay. No one would love me if I was over, because I was like a little, I had like some extra weight on me as a kid. I didn't know this was a problem until one of my parents told me it was a problem. And kids would make fun of my voice. Kids would make fun of just like anything that they could make fun of me for, right?
Yeah.
But it's so funny because like I'll see things now on like social media and stuff, and now I'm at this point where I'm like, well, you can't say anything that like hasn't been said to me before, or you can't say anything worse than I've already said to myself.
Yeah.
But when I had that realization of you can't say anything worse to me than I've said to myself, I was like, ooh, ouch.
Yeah.
Ouch, right? And so with inadequacy, it's reminding myself of like, okay, well, what am I measuring myself up against? Like, and who said that, that this wasn't good enough? And for me, it's like just kind of going through like okay, did I show up as myself? To me, that's the most important thing. Am I showing up as myself?
Yeah, being authentic, exactly.
Yeah. Am I saying things that feel good? Like there'll be times where I do podcast interviews or I'll make a video or something. I'm like, oh man, I wish I would have said this. And I'm like, you know what though? But that's what I needed to say. That's what had to come through. That was the message that had to be shared.
Yeah.
Or it was just how I had to say it, right? Or if something doesn't perform the way I want it to, and before I just kind of get really, beat up, or I beat myself up over it. And now it's just like, well, that's what it is.
Yeah.
So for me, it's really stopped looking at where I didn't measure up, or or hyper focusing on the what I did wrong, because it's that perfectionism, right?
Yeah.
Instead of focus, and instead I've just started shifting my focus to, what felt really good about it, what I like.
Yeah.
What did I like about it? Did I feel good about it? Where do I feel like I want to grow? And that's been a big help for me.
Yeah.
And it is a help for me when those inadequacy feelings kind of pop up.
Yeah.
And um it's just that taking myself out of that momentum when I can.
Yeah.
What about for you?
Yeah, that's smart. Um, yeah, I want to share on something that you had stimulated with the criticisms, and like even like, in the sauna you get the one message and you focus on that. It's so interesting because I see that as like you'll where you're at in your relationship with yourself when people start criticizing you. And for me it was so painful, and it was really highlighting to me, like, whenever I'm emotionally activated by someone's rude comment, and I get them quite often actually, I've across my channels, and it really, I know that it's something that I need to learn to love about myself, because otherwise there wouldn't be an emotional reaction, right? And so I look at those sorts of attacks as like an opportunity to love myself. And before I used to defend and get into this really angry energy, and now I just hold my hand over my heart and I'll be like, why am I feeling like this? What is this person? This person's giving me a gift to love myself more, right? They think they're going to tear me down, but really they're building me up, right? And I've had to reframe that. So it's been really powerful. And I love that you're doing the same, because people can be so mean. And YouTube is the worst out of them all. YouTube is by far the worst. And just so many trolls hiding behind like blank profiles and just being so mean. And it's like, but again, you can use it as opportunity to grow, in my opinion.
And they're wounded. And I think that's been
yeah.
another thing for me too, where it's like, happy people don't attack people on the internet.
Exactly. Yeah. So
and
true.
I've never in my life, no matter how miserable I have been, I've been to some pretty low places.
Yeah.
I have never gone out of my way to attack someone on the internet.
Yeah, exactly. Me neither.
And I just think, I'm like, God, if I felt that shitty and I still didn't attack someone, imagine how shitty they feel.
Yeah.
And I'm with you. I think it only hurts when there is something that's active within me that I need to sit with and integrate and embrace and bring home.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it's like that inadequacy was its strongest when I was refusing to integrate the parts of me that I had a lot of shame around. Over the summer, I had there was, I always say, it's so funny. It's like I spent so much time healing my inner child. Now it's time to heal my inner teenager. And in my early 20s or late teens, early 20s, I left home and I worked in a nightclub. And I had to do some things to survive that I hadn't really put a lot of thought into until just within the past year or two.
Yeah.
And all of that kind of came up, where it was like I lived in fight or flight for so long, and I lived in this kind of just survival mode for so long after that, where it's like when I did finally have a chance to like breathe and like, I've got a safe space, I've got this loving group of friends, things are great with my family. And then it was like, okay, I'm safe. And then it's like, great, now here's all the things we get to process now that you're safe. Right. And it's like, and I quit drinking, all that other jazz. And then it was like, all right, wonderful. Now that you're conscious, here's the things, enjoy, have fun.
Yeah.
And one of the things was something that that I had to do to survive when I was in my late teens, and a joke was made about it. And it was so funny because at the time I was so mad, and it was like, how dare you tease me for that or whatever. Right. But I could not be more grateful for that moment, because that was a piece that I so desperately needed to sit with and find acceptance around.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the best gifts I think that someone can give when they're making fun of you. Like I mentioned, being made fun of terribly for my voice. Like awful. Kids were just terrible. And I also wanted to be like the next Britney Spears. So I wanted to be a pop star when I was growing up. And I still love to sing and I love to go to karaoke. And if we ever meet, we're going to karaoke. I've already decided.
Heck yes.
Meet in real life, I should say.
Yeah.
Anyway, so but now it's so funny because now I'll get the most comments I get are about my voice and how soothing it is for people, and how my messages or the messages that I receive and share have helped shift people. And it's so funny because it's like this thing about me that like I disowned because other people told me I needed to disown it or not like it or be ashamed of it.
Yeah.
Was really just a way. I thought I was being called out and really I was being called in.
Yeah.
And that was just an awareness for me to find love and appreciation around those things.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because now that I do that practice and I integrate those things and I feel that pain or I feel like I'm being poked fun at or those things hurt, I don't take it as personal anymore. You know, and it doesn't hurt as bad.
Yeah.
And it feels kind of good.
Yeah. It's a testament to your work. Yeah, that's amazing. It's amazing. Okay, I'll share a little bit about how I deal with inadequacy. This has been a big one for me. And I will say, I want to validate what you said actually, because what I've been going through is healing my perfectionism. And I've, when you find safety, you have to meet all the parts that you've pushed down and that we weren't willing to face.
Yep.
I really think that healing is built on a foundation of two things: safety and presence. And you need those two things. So I had presence, but I didn't have a sense of safety to meet these parts. And now I've done a lot of deep work and now I have a lot more safety and I'm meeting all of the things that were making me use perfectionism as a compensation, right? So I'm having to meet inadequacy. I'm meeting a lot of inadequacy and self-doubt in my life right now, and it's really, really heavy. But I know that I've done enough work and I'm strong enough to continue to heal this and move through this. And I feel validated in your share in the sense that I have established a lot of safety. I've healed a lot of trauma. And when you heal trauma, you meet safety, right? So I have the safety inside me and the presence to be able to fully, now tolerate inadequacy and shame and these things, as opposed to just bypass them. So the first few points I have here, when I say how do you deal with feelings of inadequacy, I actually wrote down some maladaptive things that I still do or still working my way away from, because I don't want this to be like, oh, I've got it all figured out and I'm going to share all my wonderful tips with you. I want people to know I'm human and I'm still navigating this. And so I eat and I scroll on my phone. So when I feel inadequate, I'm like, I want to escape it. So I'll go to food or I'll go to my phone and I'll just start scrolling as a way to avoid having to be with the feeling that I'm not good enough. And usually what I meet is people who are presenting all their amazing parts on Instagram, and it makes me feel even shittier about myself. So like, that's usually not the best. Perfectionism is one that I still use once in a while. Cleaning and organizing. So it's funny, like I know something's wrong when I can't sit still and I'm having to organize and clean my whole house. It means I don't want to be with myself. So I'm choosing to do stuff to distract myself. And then this is a really big one that I've had to really notice is I fight with people in my mind and overcompensate with superiority. So this is an ego mechanism that has been employed throughout my life, that it's like when I'm not feeling good enough or I'm feeling inferior, I will play out tapes in my mind to project that I'm superior. So I'll fight with people. I'll pretend that people are attacking me and making me feel not inferior. And then I'll go on defense. And it's like this really sick, twisted thing. But it's like, again, I have so much awareness now that I'm like, I just observe it and I'm like, holy crap, like my ego is doing exactly what you said. It's trying so hard to keep me safe, but in actuality, it's not. It's perpetuating the story that I'm not safe. And the safety is actually in just being there for myself and holding myself through these feelings and moving towards them. And I think that's now I'm going to start moving into some of the things that I've been like learning and doing to help. And that's the first one, is to sit with all these feelings, be with the inadequacy. What is it trying to teach me? Get curious, right? There's always wisdom and usually an unmet need in every emotion. And when we choose to sit with it, we'll always be privy to what that unmet need is. And then we can take that data and we can start to get that need met in a healthy way. And that's how we start to heal and move towards, emotional tolerance and being with some of these heavier, more dense emotions.
Yeah.
I remind myself that it's okay to feel inadequate, and it's part of the human experience, because this is just something that we all have to face in life, and trying to run from it makes it, whenever we resist something, it just continues to persist. So I've been like trying to just say it's okay to have these feelings. It's okay to be comparing myself to all these amazing singers around me, and I'm still the newbie. This isn't okay. I'm okay to be where I'm at. It's been really helpful. I revert back to doing things that I feel masterful at. And I think sometimes it's like when we leave our comfort zone, we spend too much time in the outside zone and it becomes too much and we don't feel safe anymore. And it's okay to retreat back into comfort zone and start doing things that you feel masterful at. And like, I think that's part of, self-efficacy and confidence. It's like we step out, we try new things, it feels a little bit uneasy, and then we can resort back into another zone in our life where we have more confidence, and then that will help boost the confidence in the other areas. So I don't see confidence as this like overarching thing. I see this as like I can be confident in this area and I can be not as confident in this area. It's very like malleable and like fluid, as opposed to like static, and that's also giving myself grace, is knowing that confidence is something that moves and shapes with the day and with the mood and with all the things that are never static in the human experience, right? And then the last point I have here is every feeling of inadequacy we feel is an opportunity to love ourselves. So I've been trying my best to like be with that wisdom, and like, but the only way that I can do that is when I choose to sit with it.
Yeah.
Right. If I keep running from it and I use all my defense mechanisms, I'm not getting the opportunity to transform that inadequacy into love. Yeah. Right. So yeah, those are some of the things that I've kind of met and am still working on in a very big way. So
you mentioned food as a part of like soothing, as something that you reach for.
Yeah.
And me, same here. I need to know, what's your go-to like shame food?
Ooh, I have a lot of food allergies, so I have to be really careful because then I'll feel like crap after. But I've been eating like these gluten-free brownies with like coconut ice cream. So like anything sweet, I'm a very sweet kind of guy. I went on a s'more binge for a while. Ice cream.
Do you want to go on a shame spiral together?
Yeah, let's do it.
That sounds really fun. No, same. You know what, food? So for a while it was sex.
Okay.
Sex was like a big one for me, reaching when I needed soothing or when I didn't want to sit with big feelings.
Yeah.
And food. Now it's food. It used to be booze, then it was sex, and now it's food.
Yeah.
And I feel that on the it's funny because it's like shame, it's like this bottomless pit.
Yeah.
And I'm literally trying to fill it with burgers.
Totally. Yeah.
I found a new definition for self-love for myself.
Share, please.
Thought for the longest time self-love was like chocolate and bubble baths. Not literally, or like an Amazon shopping spree, or like, and I think those things are great. Like I still think those things are fine as a method of enjoyment. For me, self-love has been not reaching for the food, not overstimulating. Caffeine was another one that I would throw in there just to not feel anything, like give me all the caffeine. But it's just been holding space for myself. And just like the other night, it's so funny because it's like I will feel like these pockets of emotion just come up. And for me, for a while it was rage, and now we're getting down into like sadness, which for me feels better because I feel like, it's like a layered cake, right? And I'm like excited that we're down to sadness, so like we're moving through it. But it's so funny, like the other day I was like meditating and I just felt this like sadness just like come up. And I was like, and normally it'd be like, okay, we're done meditating. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to eat something. You probably eat something. And then, or like get a coffee, and just sitting there and like just crying. And then I was like, okay, we're done here. This is great. I cried. This is perfect. I go to Target. I started crying again in the middle of Target.
No.
but it was so nice. And it was nice, like not judging myself. And I remember, so I'm practicing vulnerability and authenticity with my friends, because like that's a place where I don't feel like there's anywhere in my life where I have to show up and be a different version of myself. But like my friend group, I feel extremely safe to be myself.
Yeah.
And I remember like telling them, we do Sunday family dinners every Sunday. And I remember telling them, like, I was in Target and I cried this week. Like, I was so excited. And they were like, are you all right? And I was like, no, my God, I'm great. I cried in the middle of a Target.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, for me, that's been self-love. It's just allowing me to just wherever I'm at, that's where I am.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not seeking that external thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not perfect. I still listen. I will still order a burger. Trust and believe.
Yeah. And I
But
think
I'll
that's
also cry.
part of it. Yeah. It's part of it. It's like showing up for yourself. I think there's levels, right? It's like
Yeah.
showing up for yourself can be getting a burger, getting a massage.
Yeah.
Like, I really do believe that. But I would say the second level, and we need to move through levels if we want to grow. The second level is like, I'm going to be there for myself emotionally. So it's one thing to be there for yourself physically and get yourself food and all these things and meet these needs. But okay, there's an emotional need that needs to be met too. So it's like moving through those layers. And it's interesting how you bring up rage, because I see this as such a big thing. And a lot of the work that I do with gay men, I see so much rage in the work that I do with gay men. And always underlying it is a deep sense of grief, despair, disappointment. And it's usually related to feeling so angry and rageful that I couldn't be my authentic self, that I had to spend most of my life hiding who I authentically was. And I'm fucking pissed. I'm pissed at the world. I'm pissed at myself for buying into this bullshit and then not sharing my authentic self with the world. And that's what I see the rage really connected to for a lot of gay men. And the rage will only dissipate when we start to liberate ourselves from the confines that we've created that says, I can't be my authentic self. It's not safe to be my authentic self. And that's when we meet sadness, right? So when I see gay men in sadness, I mean, like, man, you've done a lot of work on yourself. If you've met sadness, you've done a lot of work on yourself. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And that's why I do this work. That's why I do this work. Yeah.
On the note of rage, it was interesting. I'd never sat with my rage. And I had this energy healing session or this energy session, and the practitioner, who's a friend of mine, was going through, and she just goes, oh, you've got rage. And I was like, what the fuck do you mean I have rage? Like, right? Like, it's like, what do you mean? And it's so funny because I remember like the months leading up, like I was just snippy, not overreactive, but just very emotionally reactive to things, and not in a great way. And I knew it was there. I knew that this was something that was something that I needed to sit with. I just didn't have the courage to sit with it. And I remember being in therapy with my therapist. This man is going to buy a second wing to his home off of me alone. And I'm sitting there with him, and my whole life I had said, my parents in my childhood was the way it was, and I'm so thankful because now I'm here where I am. Absolutely true. But I'm in therapy that day, and I was like, this practitioner brought up rage, and he goes, how do you feel about that? And I go, I'm so fucking angry at the childhood that I had. I'm so fucking angry. And when I said those words, it was like just this like flood of just crying, and like I couldn't stop myself. And it felt so good. And I knew that there was some work to do. I knew there was some releasing to do. I knew there were some things that I had to just get. And so I sat down that night and I wrote down every single thing that I was mad at. And you know what I found, Matt? I found that, I was mad at my parents, mad at this, mad at that. But then I got to me. And I was like, I'm just so mad at myself that I allowed myself to be disrespected, unloved, put in positions that were dangerous. And then I got to, a couple weeks later, I got to like acceptance and forgiveness of like, we did what we needed to do. We were just trying to survive. And I think that's what a lot of gay men are doing. They're trying to survive. but there's power in just saying out loud, like, I'm fucking angry.
Yeah.
I think it's okay. I think it's amazing.
Yeah. I agree. Taking responsibility for it is everything, and that's the healing, and that's a sign of emotional maturity. And I think, you know, I can always tell that somebody has unresolved rage in them, like especially gay men, is when they're catty and gossipy and mean, that mean girl energy. There is so much rage underlying that energy, and it's, yes, it's anger at the world, but it's mostly anger at self. And until we take responsibility for it, we'll never heal. So I love what you just shared. There's so much truth in that. Okay, so how to overcome this? Let's share some things that we feel are really can help the listener viewer overcome imposter syndrome and or all the plethora of things we've talked about, because it's all related, it's all interconnected, right? Imposter syndrome is kind of like an umbrella of all this other stuff that's going on. So what are some things that you can share that can help people overcome this? What comes to mind?
And I think the first thing that comes to mind is just accepting where you are, being okay with it, finding ways to accept where you're at. And if you don't like where you are, shift out of it, start making different choices for yourself.
Yeah. Get support, because a lot of people don't know how to do that.
Get therapy, meditation, journaling, like, and sit with those bigger emotions. Find people that you trust to share these feelings with, because I think it gets dangerous when we keep them to ourselves.
Yeah.
It can get dangerous for people when they keep these things bottled up, and then there isn't this safe place for people to share.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it's interesting. I've kind of the day of my singing, I didn't invite anybody to come, and I was terrified. It's interesting. I kind of met this like fear of being vulnerable, and then also this fear of intimacy, and it kind of came all in at the same time. And it was like, it's very intimate for me to invite somebody to come support me in this process. But I had this fear that I didn't want people to see me, the more and more people to see me being vulnerable. So I was stuck in this, between this rock and a hard place. And I realized how terrible I am in my life right now in asking for support and letting people be there for me, letting people hold me. I suck at this. And I'm the one that holds people. I'm not the one that needs to be held. That's been a big story of mine. So
yeah.
And this is my heart opening. I'm learning to open my heart to let people be there for me, to hold me, because I need to be held. I really, really am desperate and yearning to be held in life. And I'm held by spirit. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not held very much in the physical world, because I don't let myself feel held, and I don't let people be there for me. So this is a big learning for me, and I just wanted to share that, because what you said made me think that.
Yeah.
But it's okay. So how I'm overcoming imposter syndrome and things that have worked for me. So the first one is embrace messy action. This is a term that one of my beautiful friends, Alyssa, introduced me to, and just recently. And messy action is like, take action even when it's messy. Just go for it. Don't wait until you're perfect. Perfectionism will tell us, don't put yourself on stage until you're perfect.
Yeah.
Right. Don't sing publicly until you sound like Beyonce or whatever. Right. Like that's the sickness of the mind. And it's like, I've been learning to embrace messy action. So I'm leaving my comfort zone even when it's messy and uncomfortable. And that's my face the fear and do it anyway, is like, I have to practice that. So, and yes, what do I meet? I meet vulnerability hangovers. I meet failure. I meet all the things I don't want to meet, but that's the only way that I'm going to grow through it, is to go through it. Right.
Yeah.
I'm learning to be gentle and kind to myself. And this is kind of like allowing myself to be in the beginner's mindset and just taking it one day at a time, because the old perfectionistic me was like, again, don't put yourself out there until you're perfect. It's like, let yourself be a beginner, let yourself make mistakes, and share it. Practice humility and share. So when I first went up on stage, I just said to everybody, I'm like, this is my very first open mic and I'm nervous. And right. So I had to just like let people know that I'm giving myself grace, and I wanted them to give me some grace as well. I think what I'm talking about is like growth mindset, growth mindset and fixed mindset. Fixed mindset's very ego motivated. It's very like, if you fail, you are a failure. And growth mindset is like giving yourself lots of space to make mistakes and knowing that in each mistake you make, you learn, you grow, and you get closer to what it is you're trying to achieve. And I grew up with a very fixed mindset. I think I have parents who are more in fixed mindsets, more worry energy. And I adopted that. So I've been having to, like, as an adult, heal my fixed mindset and move towards more of a growth mindset. And some of these things are helping with that. Stay present and avoid hypothetical future tripping. So what I did the day of my show is I was, my performance, I guess, I was going into the future and I was playing out how it was going to be. And I was envisioning myself failing, making mistakes, messing up my lyrics. So the thing that worked well for me that day was when I was present and I was just in my body sensations, just focusing on being in the moment. That's when I was at my best. So imposter syndrome, I find, is like, a lot of it is like comparison. It's a lot of it is pulling yourself out of the moment, going into the future, thinking about how you're not going to be successful or whatever. So the more present you can be and stay in the moment, I think the better. And then the last tip I have is ask for help. People are just waiting to support you and guide you and hold your hand through becoming masterful at something. But it's like, oftentimes when we're in imposter syndrome, we don't want to ask for help because it perpetuates our inadequacy. It's like, well, how can I ask somebody who's better than me at the thing I'm trying to become good at for help? Because it's going to just make me feel less than, because I'm going to continuously compare myself to them. But having somebody to be your kind of like your teammate and helping you grow and evolve towards this being masterful at something, it's everything. Like, I don't know what I would have done without my vocal coach. Like, she's literally helped me grow into feeling confident enough to get up and sing in front of people. And, this is the work we do, right? We guide people and walk people through and empower them through their healing journeys to becoming their most authentic self. Like, that's, having somebody by your side is everything, right? We are social creatures, and I think we all need to be there walking each other home, as Rumi said. So I think it's so powerful. Yeah.
It's one of my most favorite quotes.
I know. Do you remember how the whole thing goes?
No, I just remember we are all just walking each other home. I don't know the full part. That's the only part that I've like memorized and committed to memory.
Yeah.
But it's something that I've chosen to live by since I read it.
Yeah.
And it's really beautiful.
It is beautiful. That's the quote at the end of my book, first book that I wrote.
Okay.
I put that at the end of my book.
That's such a fun synchronicity.
It is. Yeah. That's why I shared it. Cause I'm like, this is interesting that this is coming up. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything that we didn't cover that you feel that you want to share? Or is there anything alive in your being right now that you feel necessary to share with us?
No, you know what? I'm just so grateful to be here with you and to share some space with you today, and anyone listening. And, I think that what I have to remind myself a lot of the times is that we're just here to enjoy the journey. And so I try to remind myself that as much as possible when the imposter syndrome or the fear creeps in. And something that, Abraham Hicks says a lot is that, two vibrations can't exist at the same time.
Yeah.
Meaning imposter syndrome and belief in self can't be happening at the same time. It can only be one or the other.
Yeah.
And so I hope that if there's anyone that heard anything that resonated, that throughout this conversation, that it helped some people shift into something that might feel just a little bit better in those moments where that fear has a lot of momentum.
Exactly. And the thing I'm going to take away from this is that we're all going through it. We're all going through it, and we're all comparing ourselves, and they're comparing themselves, and we're all in this dance of like, am I enough? Like, can I do this? We're all scared shitless, right? And we're all great actors and actresses on this, this play of life. pretending like we're not scared, but we're all terrified, and it's okay. It's okay. So I feel seen today listening to you share. Like, there's so many beautiful similarities between you and I just feel really grateful that you're now in my life and we can keep connecting and creating, and who knows what this friendship has in store for us. So I'm excited about that. And I do feel gratitude as well, like just really grateful for you and coming on and sharing your wisdom with us, and your presence. There's something about you, like I was laughing a lot in this session, and I just was immediately pulled into presence with you, and it's just like a really, really beautiful gift. So I feel quite safe in like I can just be free to be myself with you, which is such a great feeling. Yeah,
that's like the best compliment. You know what, like I love, like I love a good physical compliment. Don't get me wrong, right? Like I'm up in that gym, and every time I post a gym selfie, I like the great legs. I'm like, I know, right? But I think that's one of the best things, because for me, that's the most important thing with people that are in my life, that I feel safe. And I also felt safe sharing. And there were moments where I forgot we were actually recording a podcast. So great.
I know.
And I appreciate you sharing this awesome co-creative energy. I feel nice and buzzy now, which is always a good thing after a nice long conversation.
Yeah, me too. I feel the same feeling. It'll be nice to take it into the weekend because we're recording this on a Friday. So
yeah,
good vibes. How can people find you? And is there anything you want to share about what you're doing in the world before we wrap up?
You can find me on Instagram, Travis Warrior Unicorn, all one word, no weird underscores, no funny misspellings. And then my website is travisholp.com.
Yeah.
And that's how you can track me down and find my work.
Yeah, amazing. I get because I follow you on Instagram, so I get your update for every day, and it's just like a shot of espresso, like pew, like it's really, really beautiful. So I love what you're creating and bringing into the world. Keep doing it. It's amazing.
You too.
And you deserve all the success that you're seeing in life right now. You really do.
Listen, we're gonna do karaoke. I can feel it.
Yeah. Where are you again? You're in LA?
Tacoma, Washington.
Oh, Tacoma. That's right. Yeah. So you're not too far. I'll have to come hit up the coast because I have so many connections along
visit
there. Yeah.
Anytime. I'll introduce you to my friend Will, and he'll probably like fangirl. When I told him that we were recording this today, he was like, "Are you serious?" And I was like, yeah, I'm serious.
Yeah. We have a huge contingent in Washington, in Seattle. It's our largest audience of all the places. It's so fascinating. I'm like, I wonder why.
Needs to be a live event.
Yeah, maybe like it's crazy. Like it was like, I think maybe Calgary was high because that's where I'm from, and Toronto, that's where Michael and Callan are from. And then it was like Seattle was like way higher. It was like I'm like, do I know people in Seattle, or what is it about this region? So
I'm getting chills. Like there needs to be like a live something.
Yeah, maybe. That's interesting. So shout out to all of our Seattle people.
Yeah.
All right. Well, for people that are listening on YouTube, or on, I should say, podcast, please leave us a star rating, preferably 5 stars if you enjoyed. And please share this with people, because so many people are struggling with imposter syndrome and could use some of the wisdom that we shared today. And if you are watching on YouTube, please leave comments. We do use them as reviews. And also we will make sure that Travis or I share our wisdom if you have any other further questions or whatever. So I'll make sure Travis sees those questions. All right. Much love. Until next time, y'all. Take care.